this is not how you want to go down with the chip.
Some people are convincing themselves that they're happy when in reality it's a very difficult and abusive situation.
I'm going to have to go back to the NIS where I point out to you that as you keep saying that the most dangerous situation for women is in the home.
Well, that's according to the UN around the world, though,
okay,
not just here.
Okay, but inside of the United States, at least, and inside of the Western nations, this is a commonality that they all share. It's not usually from the husband. It's usually from boyfriends of single women or single moms. Or as far as, for instance, cohabitation. Cohabitation leads to some of the worst outcomes for women when they're not married. And men. It leads to terrible outcomes for both. This idea that you have that when you say this, it's very loaded. It gives the impression that husbands are at home abusing their wives. And the opposite is actually true. The truth is that when women get divorced and they end up in these occupied relationships, that's when they end up with the most amount of abuse, not from their husbands.
Well, I think it's, you know how we were talking about earlier about like confounding factors and other things that might, the classification of things might change.
Oh man, Waco, that's a good one. Man is the only creature who refuses to be what he is. Albert Camus or Camus. That's a very good one, man.
Results of studies. For this one, I'm looking at it, and it says facts and statistics on domestic violence DV, and it's mainly including intimate partner. So it's not talking about husband or boyfriend.
That's why we separate them, right? So we would separate those two categories to see who's the more abusive.
Do you have a statistic?
Yes, I just gave it to you twice from the NIS.
But I know, but like I'm looking at it, and again, like I'm having.
Show me the numbers from the NIS that you're looking at. I actually don't believe you.
Oh, I'm not looking at the NIS right now. I was looking at it earlier, could not find the number you were talking about.
Yeah, but you looked at it for
does not
1
exist.
minute.
No, I didn't.
You did. I literally pulled it direct from the NIS.
Hold on.
I didn't.
You did.
Let me go back. There's a super chat in the whatever podcast, right? From a stay-at-home mom. I am very happy that I said, quote, F school, close quote, and became a wife and mother. I'm 25, have 3 kids, have an amazing husband, and spend the day with them. What did you do today? Whine about having a combo? That's right. I mean, she's saying that, but I can guarantee you her inbox will probably be with demons and witches saying that she just need to just be hanged or something. That's how they do it, guys. That is literally how they do it. If you say something like this, they just go after you like demons.
I literally pulled it direct from the NIS itself.
When there is a minor in the home and there is abuse, they look at both parents. And in that case, they are finding, according to this, the Domestic Violence Center data for Mankind Initiative, I'm finding...
The Mankind Initiative?
Yeah, here,
the
I'll
cult?
send it to you.
The cult? The Mankind Initiative?
I have no idea what you're talking. I mean, this is it's a statistic, it's like a study that's produced.
Yeah,
I could go to the University of Pennsylvania's one.
Yeah, do
if you
that
want.
because the Mankind Initiative, as far as I know, is a Western cult which exists as a demasculating agency. Just so you know.
Okay. Well, so it's saying analyzing 31,000. This is Penn today. So this does go to your point. It is just slightly above the spouse rate for abusive boyfriends. But again,
and those go reported much more, right? The marriage rates go reported much more than than these rates where you're living outside of the home with another man.
Right. So
because that's the more common living arrangement. Therefore, I am correct. It is true that the most dangerous situation is co-occupancy, not marriage.
I mean, there's different. I think it's difficult. You deal a lot in absolutes, and as a teacher, that's something that we are told not to do to facilitate like open communication. Is because you typically say, "Well, this is true. This is true. That means I am truth. I am correct in saying this thing." But again, statistics are changing all the time. So actually, you're contradicting yourself because at the beginning you were like,
"What I'm saying is
things
change." I can negate these with logic by simply pointing this out.
I mean, you can negate anything when you talk to yourself like you do, because you're not really listening to the words that are coming out of my mouth.
I'm listening. Do you want me to steel man your position? You just said to me that everything when it comes to statistics is fluid. I would tend to agree with that based on oncoming data which is coming in. However, we still have.
And you notice how she say okay in a submissive body language, like she's opening her eyes, saying okay. And even right now, I stopped this. She's looking down, defeated. But she's saying, okay, like, okay. In a submissive state, like, okay. Okay, submissive. But then she want to just attack and then go back to that submissive state. because she's about to crash out. Look at her. It's not working. What she's doing is not working. And she underestimated men. She underestimated men, especially men like Andrew. That they do this, and worse, they enjoy it. Andrew enjoys debating, and he's having a blast. He's just taking each of her points, dismantling them, and not only that, he wants to get more. That's why he can be here for hours.
Have to apply logic and inductive reasoning even when we're dealing with data sets, especially.
I didn't say we don't. I agree.
So those are unchanging, unconfounding variables, logic and reason. So if we're using those two things, we can easily
Yeah,
point
that's a good one. The fool doth think he is wise, but the wise man knows himself to be a fool. Good point.
This and say we know for sure that it's going to be underreported in cohabitation and possibly reported at least better from the marriage standpoint. That's probably true. I don't think anybody would really dispute that.
Yeah, actually, I found a study to your point. Researchers have consistently found higher rates of violence in cohabitating compared to marital relationships, but in those cases, still it is 95% of perpetrators are male. So what do you have to say in terms of that?
Yeah. Okay. So here's
what
happens.
Kind of male?
What feminism has done, especially with the destruction of the marriage, is it has put women in the most vulnerable position, where now they leave their home with their husband, where the abuse rates are not nearly so high as pretentious feminists pretend they are, so that they can cohabitate with men, with other men who are strangers to them, strangers to their children. It puts their children at risk, and it puts them at actually higher risk than if they had stayed with their husbands in most cases.
Oh, okay. That makes sense as an explanation, but I think that, again, that's an anecdote that's probably not true for everybody. And
I don't think so, Waco. Was there any alcohol involved? I don't think so. I really don't think so. I think she's clean, and I think she has some alcohol. She probably could have performed better. I think she could have performed better, and that way she can be more relaxed. She's too stingy. Like, I don't think this is helping her, because her one-liners are not working. Her sign language is not working. Her negative body language is not working. Her trying to control the conversation is not working. So what other options she has? She has no options.
the cases are pretty clearly in place. Like the evidence has shown that regardless of whether there's children in the marriage, 95% of the perpetrators are men. And, you know, we were talking about how it is likely underreported for female perpetrators, right, in marriages. I'm sure there are abusive wives, but I think that the point being is that it is it is definitely a pattern in terms of, in the United States, of the home being made unsafe because of men that live there. It doesn't have to be the husband, but it is men that are, being violent with the women that they are living with. And I think your point about how it's women that are picking these boyfriends that are abusing them is not fair, because again, you don't know men that are going to turn out to be abusive until they hit you one day. It doesn't start out with, if you went on a first date with a woman and she clocked you in the face, would you continue to date her? No, you wouldn't. It's the same with women.
Here's what we're going to do. Andrew, you give your response, then we're going to do prompt change.
Okay.
Okay, so that
was the end of my
I don't even understand this. Like, all of the stats back up exactly what I'm saying. You agree with me that what I'm saying is likely the most true case scenario, at least compared to all the
about
numbers.
Boyfriends being more abusive?
Yeah, can I finish? Right?
Oh, I was just clarifying.
I didn't cut you off. So the thing is like, look, as we look at this data, the data backs up everything that I just said, especially when it comes to cohabitation. You say, well, it's not women's responsibility that they're picking these men. It's like, well, women are initiating most of these divorces. For one, they're leaving their husbands. They put themselves in this confounding situation where now they're being abused by strange men, often because they want them as sexual partners or other things like this. You say, well, that's true that the abuse happens inside of these places, male, whether there's children or not. Great. But when it's a cohabitation event where children are involved, you're now putting your children at risk because the risk skyrockets for abuse. Skyrockets for abuse of those children. No wonder.
Wakaman is saying lapses in good judgment are commonplace when people are put on the spot. It seems like they want to make their points rather than relate pertinent information to the topic at hand. Are you talking more about her? Because I think, and I don't think she's there to really get the arguments across. I don't think she's there even to get the information. I think she thought this was going to be a walk in the park. Personally, I think that's what she thought it was going to be. I'm gonna say these talking points, and because most of the time I don't get rebuttal, so she does. I think she does live in TikTok, and she mute people when she wanted to do her back and forward. But that mute button is not there, which is a coping mechanism. And look at her. I just stopped it. I don't even know she was gonna have this body language. She's looking down, looking at her pencil, defeated, and she's like, man, this is not working. I'm I'm getting destroyed. All my points are getting destroyed. Look at her. And I literally just stopped it. I didn't even know she was gonna have this body language.
Men don't want to get married to modern women
Right, seems
if they're
kind of
going to get
contrived. Yep.
divorced, and their women are going to put their children in an abusive situation, right? And that's what the stats show more than anything. Not that women are being abused, but that when they have authority over children, they are putting them in situations where they are abused or abusing them themselves. That's what's actually happening.
We do have to change prompts. Andrew, I think you wanted to perhaps discuss patriarchy and force doctrine.
Sure.
Would you like to get into that? Go ahead.
Yeah, you can start.
Yeah, so I'll give you my definition of patriarchy first.
No, I love
It's
this
a
topic.
historic definition. It means rule of the father. I often will short phrase this to from the father. Usually it operates around something which is patrilineal lineage rather than matrilineal lineage, though not always. You can have patriarchies where there's matrilineal lineage. You can find this in Judaism and other places like this. When I talk about patriarchy, I'm broadly speaking, at least in modernity and in the last 100 years, about men being in charge of general systems. We could just say men being in charge of general systems, head of the household, head of the family, things like this. My view is that patriarchy is always going to end up being the default, especially the more feminism there is. You'll push more people into the patriarchy role, and here's why. Because of force doctrine. Force doctrine is a doctrine which I came up with, which tries to describe a phenomenon which you yourself are going to have to concede is true. That half of the world right now, if men decide to...
Self-flow, you're saying that his whole argument is a false dichotomy. He claims it's a secular argument, but then he brings a moral, and all of a sudden you're wrong because you are not Christian. I don't know what you're talking about. Meaning, like, I guess you're talking about this debate? Because I don't think he really has used Christianity. He's going to talk about Christianity now since the patriarchy, right? The argument, the patriarchy, is coming from the father. And that's a very common Christian theme.
They can basically exterminate every single woman inside of their nations, and there's not a damn thing women can do about it. We can find this in most of the Middle Eastern nations. We can find this basically anywhere that we look, right? They can't actually do anything about it. Also, when it comes to rights, rights are a social construction, product of the mind. Because of that, they are not inherent. And since this is the case, force is what is the practical applicator. And if men decided to, by force, take away women's rights, women cannot do anything about it. The opposite is not true. If women wanted to take away men's rights and men didn't want to let them, they could not. And because of this force doctrine application, women's rights all come from men, not inherently from themselves. Therefore, feminism is a lie, complete lie. That's force doctrine. I don't know if you have anything to say about it.
Well, aside from the fact that that is genuinely a terrifying idea, I think that the idea that men could just take away our rights and wipe us away is why feminism is necessary, is because we are trying to get enough men, I suppose, on our side, if you think about it in terms of like a military occupation, so that that wouldn't happen. Because I think that it is possible for men to take away our rights at a blanket pace. But I don't agree with your conclusion based off that premise, though. I don't believe that women...
So she just conceded that's a possibility. Isn't that crazy? And then she conceded that she will need men in her side to even defend that same ideology that she's trying to defend right now. See, this is all comes down to this, guys. This is all it matters. Like, can your collective group, female group, defend your own ideology?
inherently don't have rights that is given to us by men. And the reason why is because I believe that all human beings inherently should have equality.